Hello everyone. Please let me know if there are any problems with audio or video, but to my knowledge, everything should be working. As per usual, OBS has some bits that are working for me and some bits that aren't working for me. But I think, as far as I can tell, I have audio and video. So, okay, hello to everyone who has joined so far. I can see Grudy is here, I can see Steve is here, and I know Steve is just itching to get home and do his LC too. I'm stealing his thunder, that's terrible. And thank you, Grudy. I think I picked up 5 subscribers from your little recommendation at the end of your little live stream there. So, any of... oh, actually, I'll wait till a few more people come on, but obviously any of my viewers who want to... jump across and have a look at Retk Mod's channel. Have a look. It is a great watch. So, okay, looks and sounds food. I'm glad I'm so... Oh, good. Okay, good. You're making me hungry. So this is a bit of an impromptu thing. I hadn't really planned to do a live stream today, but there was a fair bit of peer pressure involved, and I do like to buckle to peer pressure. So, by the way, check these out, Grudy. I just was digging around in my RAM today and found a whole stack of these. Whole bunch of 64s. Another 64. Another 64. Another 64. Another 64. And all of these will go into the old 9600. But I'm sorry, you can't have them. The plan is that they'll be going into one of my little Macs. But anyhow, that's another story. Okay, so what was I looking at? Okay, so one of the things I do need to do today, this is an actual job that I do need to get done, and that is a floppy drive service. I mean, I've got a couple of other things that I need to do. I want to recap a CD-ROM drive. This is the caddy-loading CD-ROM drive. So the kind of 3 tasks that I've got here. One is the recapping of a 6100 PowerPC 6100 with the old 601 CPU there. I've got a auto inject floppy drive that I need to service and replace the eject cog and give it a good old clean. And I have a caddy-loading CD-ROM drive that I need to disassemble and then recap. So they're the kind of 3 tasks that I have set myself for today. I won't necessarily stream all of them, but that is what I have to do. Now, are there any requests for which one of those I do first? Is there a particular procedure or task of those 3 that someone would say, hey, yes, I would like to see that one? So just a quick recap of what those ones were. There was a recapping of a 6100 logic board. There was a servicing of an auto-inject floppy drive. And there was a recapping of a caddy-loading CD-ROM drive. So, some thinking music. Da, 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 da. Girl from Ipanema goes walking. So, if anyone would like to offer any suggestions and put forward what they would like to see first, please let me know. In the meantime, I suppose I may as well whip out floppy. Okay, we've got a floppy. We've got a CD vote. Well, I can tell you what, the floppy is probably the well, I won't say easier because it's inside this and has to come out, but it's right here. Whereas the CD-ROM drive, I think, is still upstairs, which I'd have to run and get. So I might do the floppy first. Oh, look at this. We've got 3 votes. 2 votes for the CD. So we've got 2 votes for the CD, 1 for the floppy. So in the meantime, I'll just I'm poised. I'm poised to see what the next vote is. I'm not even sure there are going to be that many votes because I'm not even sure that many people I've got actually watching at this particular moment in time. 8 viewers at this particular moment in time. So just hello Brock. So that's just you can have the deciding vote there, Brock. So do you want to see me service a floppy drive? Okay, we've got 2 floppy, 2 CD. Either is good. Okay, all right. Floppy it is. It's here. I'll do the CD next. That's obviously the next one. So here is my, this is actually from inside a Macintosh SE30 because of the weight of this thing when I put it on the table. It does make the camera wobble, and for that I apologise. This has already had all the screws taken out of it, so I can whip the back off nice and easily. The floppy drive, I'll just swap across here to a side angle, and you can see just how messy my workshop is. So here is the, let's see if I can get that up there again. There we go, a little bit better. Sorry about the lousy camera here, but this one is just an old, what do you call it, 720p. So, all right, so what we have in here, this, I don't need to discharge this at the moment because this has been off for a really long time, so I can go around and touch things in here with impunity. But obviously, if you are opening one of these that has been powered on recently, very important to discharge the CRT. I have videos on how to do that, so if you jump onto my channel, you will see that there is a video in the featured section. There is discharging a CRT in a compact Mac. So what we have here is a Macintosh SE30 with a this card here is a network card, so we can see that's the Ethernet card there. I need to get the floppy drive out, and the floppy drive is in there. And so in order to get that, I need to undo the screws, and to undo the screws, I need to take out the logic board. So it's a full dismantle time, quick as possible. Gonzalo, am I saying that right? Thank you for joining me from Portugal. Okay, so, and to anyone else I haven't said hello to, Lewis Reed, take a walk on the wild side. Who else have we got here? Alex, I think I said hello to Brock, but yes, yeah, and I've got, who else? Molto, Matt's here. So, okay, well, if I have missed anyone and haven't said hello, I do apologise. Incidentally, I didn't start to say this at the beginning. My name is Bruce Rain from Brankus Creations. Thank you for joining me on my channel. I am here in Sydney, Australia, where we have no toilet paper. Okay, so logic board pops out. I've now got to squeeze my hand in here to try and get this power cable out. So, Krishna, hello. Lorenzo, hello. Anyone else who is on watching and has not yet said hello, please say hello. This is okay, you know, this is, yeah, I think this one's got 8 megs in it. I could be wrong, but anyhow. So there's the logic board. Logic board, which one? That camera or that camera? Very exciting there. This is the later version of the logic board. The 2 ways you can tell it's the later version. The first is the fact that this chip is soldered on. It's actually attached to the board. It's not in a socket. The earlier ones have that here in a socket. And the other is here. There's a little capacitor just there, you can see. In the earlier versions of this, that capacitor was actually located here underneath the RAM, the ROM slot. So that's the way you can tell whether you've got the early or the later revision. This is the later revision of the logic board. So let's plonk that over there in my little pile of logic boards. Okay, so if we have a look here underneath now. Okay, so these here, there are 4 screws. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those 4 screws are what are holding in the floppy drive and the hard drive. Now I'm going to undo those, and then this will then need to pass out the side here. Now I will always recommend to people, particularly if you are new to the inside of one of these, take this thing off first. It just gives you a little bit more room. You're less likely to damage something or knock something. So this just comes off with 1, 2, 3 screws there, and then that piece just comes out. That little bracket comes out, and then you've got much better access to the back of the computer. Because these guys here, these ones are particularly bad. You've got this little yoke connector on the back, and then if I lift that off, you'll see right there, you may not see it, it's probably out of focus, but right there, that little light bit in the middle, that is a little glass seal that holds the air out, keeps it as a vacuum. And if you snap that, you wreck the CRT, and then you just have to replace it. You can't repair it. So, right. So let's undo this, and I'll get another quick look at the chat here. We're all going to be using old Sears catalogs soon. Yes, we are. I'm sure you're referring to the old toilet paper issue. Yes, it is quite interesting here. I don't know why we started the panic buying out here for whatever reason when they said, oh, there is a possibility that people might have to self-isolate, and everyone just went, toilet paper! And they basically went out and just bought every single piece of toilet paper available. And it has been about a week and a half, I think, since I've seen any toilet paper on the shelves here. Probably coming up for about 2 weeks now. It hasn't been an issue for me. I had plenty of toilet paper in the cupboard beforehand. But it is likely to become an issue if they don't get on the shelves within the next, let's say, week and a half. Then things are going to start getting interesting. So, eggs were the ones going today when I was in the shop. At the store, there's a lot of the things are starting to come back to the shelves. Paper towels are available now. I saw tissues were there. These are all things that were gone. I see the shelves have got a bit of pasta there now. The pasta was all disappearing. There's some rice there. Again, the rice was disappearing. But I saw eggs disappearing in very large quantities today. So maybe eggs are the next thing to go. So there you go. Funny old world we live in right now, is it not? Okay. So, let me just have a quick catch up on the chat. A while ago during the live stream with Greg. Okay. I'm glad I was able to do that. Have you used the Rominator 2? I think that's what that's meant to be, Rominator 2. No, I haven't. I'm tempted to get one, but I haven't used the Rominator 2. So, making the SE32 32-bit clean to run more than 8 megabytes of memory. Yes, I mean, of course, you can use the Mode 32 plugin, or control panel, I should say. That's plugin is a bit more of a modern word. So if you are to use the Mode 32 control panel on an SE30, you can get it to recognize more than 8 megabytes of RAM. There are some issues associated with that. Some older versions of software don't like the old Mode 32 plugin, but they do allow you to get it to recognize more. And my this isn't my SE30, but my SE30 that I have up back in the house there has 4 16 megabytes and 4 ones, so whatever that is, 68 or whatever megabytes of RAM in it. And I'll be honest, I've got another set of 4 16s. I could take the SE30 up to 128 if I wanted to, but for pretty much everything I do on the SE30, 68 megabytes of RAM is ample. I've got the other 4 16 sitting in my Macintosh 2CI to give that one a little bit of oomph. Okay, so I've undone these 4 screws here. So this needs to come out now, and I mean this basically just pushes out now. This is now loose, but I want to lift it back up again because this has got to come out in a way where I don't nudge this and potentially damage it in a very bad way. So I'm going to undo this cable there. That's the power cable for the hard drive. This hard drive is shot, by the way. It's an old quantum spinner. I think it's probably the original this computer came with. Okay, now I'm going to take this off for obvious reasons, and then I'm just going to lift this up and slide it out under here, and out she comes, all safe as houses. Then we'll put that back on there, all ready for going back in again. I should make mention that I have actually broken one of these CRTs. I did it back in the 1990s. It would have been about probably 1992 would be my guess. I had someone came to get a Macintosh SE upgraded, upgraded to 4 megabytes of RAM. And they brought it to me, and foolish old me, I had upgraded RAM in an SE before, but there are different versions of the SE, and this was one that had a slightly different way of telling it how much RAM was in it, and I ended up taking the board out, putting the board in, taking the board out, putting the board in, trying to get it to work. I finally figured out what the problem was. That was fine. But at one of those times when I was taking the board out and putting it in again, I managed to, hit the yoke, snap the little glass thing, and let all the air into the vacuum. And that was the first, and I'm happy to say last time I ever did that. So here we go with the floppy drive. So this is essentially 2 brackets on top of each other. One is the hard drive bracket on the top, one is a floppy drive bracket on the bottom. Interesting thing to note, not on the SE30, but if this was an SE, there is actually a little slot at the top. If you were wanting to change it back to a dual floppy instead of a hard drive and a floppy, you can just mount another floppy drive on top instead. You can't do that with the SE30 because it doesn't have a second slot at the top. So, just got to do a quick check up on the chat because I keep just moving across my. Oh wow, look at all this. There's a lot here. I've got to go back. Yeah, sorry. Sorry for getting Girl from Ipanema stuck in your head there, Grudy. Okay. 3 in the morning over here, but I have some toilet paper. That is good. That is a comforting thing to have toilet paper, isn't it? It just makes you feel good inside to know you've got toilet paper in the cupboard. So now it's a good time for the memes. Yes, local stores out of pasta, vegetables, and hamburger helper food. Now it's interesting. We don't have hamburger helper out here in this country, but you know there are. It's interesting to see what goes because, like throughout here, I haven't seen any issues with supply of fresh produce. So fruit and vegetables, they all just seem to be in ample supply. So for whatever reason, if people are feeling like they need to lock themselves away, they don't want to eat any fresh food. So yes, but definitely pasta is one of the ones. Apparently baker's flour has been going as well, so people are getting prepared to make their own bread. So I guess it's good to see people making their own bread. I don't think many people do that anymore. Okay, pizza's got, well, see, that was the other thing. I didn't check the frozen food aisle, but I would have thought if people were locking themselves away for a couple of weeks and not going outside, they would be grabbing a lot of frozen food. You would think, wouldn't you? Most people, but anyhow. Okay, right, moving down. Sorry, I'm just working my way through the chat. I left it for quite some time, and there's a lot of build up now. Okay. Floppy. Yep, chunky drive and floppy bundle. Yes, makes a brick look thin. It certainly does. Can you still do decent web browsing in 2008 MacBook? I tell you what, there'll be other people that could answer that. I'm not the best person to answer that. I have 2 broken Macintosh compact CRTs. Yes, well, yes. I mean, there's not much you can do with a broken Macintosh CRT. I tell you. Basically, what you do is you take the yoke off it, which is the wrapped wire thing around here. You take this off because if you're going to replace the CRT, you're going to want to put that back onto it. And then you throw the CRT away. I don't know, give it to your glass recycler or something. Because I'll tell you what, there's nothing you can do with them. Okay, where are we getting to? Folks, they are pretty much cleared out on everything. Well, dough to make my own pizza. Good on you. There's an Italian. They broke the little glass and it's sealed off the back end. How you going? Dodo, hello. How are you? Thank you for joining the stream. So, one thing I can tell you, folks, is that although there are still things missing from the shelves here in Australia, things are starting to get normal. So let's just say that there will come a point where people feel satisfied that they have enough of these things in their pantry, and then they'll stop panic buying them. So for most things out here, things are now getting back to normal. The only thing that there is still a supply issue with is toilet paper. Apparently you can get it. You got to get up really early in the morning, or you pre-order it and then go pick it up, that sort of thing. So, all right. So this is the original quantum hard drive from this computer, and it does work intermittently. It is a 40 megabyte there. The little Apple logo with the 40 there. So isn't that nice? So yep, and obviously it is a what is it? It's a full height drive as well. So obviously the later drives are obviously a lot thinner than that, but that is a full height drive. So there we go. That's enough of that. So now we've got the floppy drive. This is what we're here for. This is the exciting part. It's not really. So for this, we've got a little cable that's going to come out. We've got this bracket here, which we need to undo 4 screws to get the drive out. And yes, I mean, I guess there are probably some people out there that just stock up on things all the time, and so they're really not having an issue. They're just all laughing at us. Yes, I'm not much of a kind of a panic buy type person. Okay, so here's the drive mechanism. This is a 1.44 or high density floppy drive. It is the auto inject type, and the reason why you can tell it's an auto inject, let's get some light over here. The reason why you can tell it's an auto inject is that it doesn't have a little black flap at the front. The manual inject drives, which came out on the later computers, they had a little black plastic flap. They're actually quite different in many ways, but that's probably the main point of difference. So so I need to. The main problem with these is within this eject mechanism here, they end up with a cog, which I call the cheese cog, and that cog, when it gets old, becomes the consistency of cheese. They look a little bit like that. Actually, they look a lot like that. And so I'm going to clean this, but I am also going to replace the cog in the eject mechanism. This will only take a moment, then I'll move on to the CD-ROM drive, because basically when it comes to cleaning this, most of it is I'm just going to drop it into the ultrasonic cleaner and then let do most of the hard work. So we need to take this, let's call it a cage or a bracket or whatever you want. So this, if I press this that way and this that way, it's the same as putting a disc in. I trick it into thinking there's a disc in there, and so that bracket then closes downwards. So I am then going to, incidentally, I do have a detailed video on doing this process on my channel. So if you're looking at this and you're thinking, I want to do this, but you're going too fast, or something like that, or I want a close-up of that, jump onto my channel, have a look at restoring a floppy drive. It's all there. So, right, so this needs to come off, and it's actually really easy to take this off. The first thing I'm going to do is remove this little black plastic thing here, which is it's a little device that lifts the head up when the drive is open so that the head doesn't catch on the floppy disk on its way out. So that just lifts this head up here. So that comes off, zippity-doo-dah. Then we've got a little spring here. I'm not going to be able to show that terribly well. Spring comes off. Whee! Another spring comes off. Whee! And that's it. At this point now, I can put this down, and with a little bit of wiggling and woggling, that'll just come out like that. And then the next step, this has all got old grease all over it. All of that old grease has got to come off. I'll get a little bit of sort of isopropyl alcohol and toothbrush here, and I'll scrub some of that old grease off. But most of the cleaning I'm going to use with the ultrasonic cleaner. I'll drop that in and let it clean. So, thank you, Krishna. I'm glad you enjoyed that video. There were a couple of other videos out there on doing floppy drives, and I just, no insults or anything to the people who did those videos, but there were just a couple of things I just thought, I don't quite like the way this has been done, and so I wanted to do it myself. So that's the main top bit off. Then we've got this bottom bit here. This is the bit that you push to actually force the floppy drive to eject if it won't eject by itself. And this is held on by 4 little kind of plastic washers. And for those, I use my eyebrow tweezers. My little tweezers for plucking eyebrows. I don't use them for plucking eyebrows. You'll probably be able to tell that from my great big bushy eyebrows. But the eyebrow tweezers I have found are really, really well made. So that's why I use them. And I can't find them at the moment. I mean, they're here, but my workshop is an absolute mess. I mean, I would have liked to clean this, but I was sort of kind of rushing to start the stream. There we are. Revlon tweezers. And yes, feel free to send me sponsorship, Revlon. And then I just use those to lift off these little washers. I do apologise that I can't give you nice close-up views of this. But I am basically just taking these washers off. As I say, this part is very quick. I'll be over and done with very, very soon. And then that just comes... Oh, no, it doesn't come off because I've got to take the eject mechanism off first. So the eject mechanism here is done with 2 screws. There's 1 screw just there and 1 just there. And that comes undone. And... eject mechanism comes out. And there's a little 3-pin plug down here that just needs to come out with the eject mechanism like that. And then, as I say, this then comes off. And that's another one that needs good cleaning. That's got grease all over it. That's going to need to get that grease cleaned off. So again, that's one for the ultrasonic cleaner. And then we've got quite a lot of grease on the bottom of this as well. That's all around here. You can see all the goop here. You may not be able to see it, but there's grease and goop all around here as well. So, so there's that. And this one here, I can't really stick in the ultrasonic cleaner. I mean, there's just too much stuff here I would really not like to see submerged in liquid. So with this, I'm just going to do this with a toothbrush and some isopropyl alcohol. So get it all nice and clean so that it doesn't have coronavirus. And just get all of that old grease off, and then I'm going to replace it with new grease. The new grease will be better, faster. Okay, now I just noticed that my image up here is like really bleached out. Oh, I know why, it's because of this thing. Okay, sorry. Right, so bit of cleaning, get rid of any old dust from around here. This is just normal sort of cleaning I would do with these. Just try and get this looking as much like sort of fresh, untainted virgin metal as much as possible. Right, there we go. Who have we got? Oh, hello, Trina. Welcome to the stream. At this particular juncture, I am just fixing up a floppy drive for a Macintosh SE. This is just one of the tasks that I needed to get done today, so I thought I would do this one. So I'm pretty happy with the cleanliness of that one there. I've cleaned that all away, and then obviously when I put this back together, I will use some grease. I've got some grease here. Don't use the sort of stuff you use on your car. This is I bought this from an electronics place, and I put some new grease on there, and that'll help give it sort of extra slip. So, and then the only other thing that I clean on this part, well, things that I clean on this are, you know, the head mechanism. So in here, there's a little cog, little worm gear, and this motor spins, turns that worm gear, and makes the heads move backwards and forwards. I generally like to clean the old grease off that, and then of course I clean the heads themselves as well. So I'm going to, and you can actually remove the motor for cleaning, which is actually what I'm about to do now. Just watch me. Just watch me. It's about to happen. Okay. And oops, that fell down. I don't want that to fall down. I always lose those little plastic washers. Okay. And this then comes out. Yeah. Little 4-pin plug there. And bang, that just happened. So that's the little worm gear that spins around there and moves the head backwards and forwards. So I just get, again, isopropyl and a toothbrush and give that a good old clean. I'll get new grease on it afterwards, but I just want that all looking sparkly clean. There we go. And it's looking lovely. And then I'll just clean some of the grease off the little part of the head that hooks over the worm gear. That needs a little bit of cleaning as well, because that gets lots of old gunk on it. There we go. Now let's get a little tissue. Good toilet paper substitute. Okay. Right. So I can actually put that back on there. That was a quick, easy bit, that one. And actually, I'll tell you what I will do. I'll put the grease on it now. I think it'll be easier to put the grease on now. Oh, Steve. Cellular reception. I'll catch the rest at home. Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you for joining. I know you're not around at the moment, so I do appreciate the you going the extra effort. There we go. A little bit of grease on there. Just going to rub that around. Make sure there's grease everywhere. Okay. And then this can go back in place. Right. And screw number 1. Screw number 2. Motor goes back in. This plug goes back in. I do apologise. I know the view ain't too crash hot from here. This isn't the microscope stuff, which is usually a little bit more interesting. All right, so then that's the worm gear back in there. And one really important thing when you're working this is here is a little thing called an interrupter. It's an interrupter switch, and what it does is when the head moves backwards and forwards, there's a little plastic piece that passes through that interrupter. And when it does pass through that interrupter, it tells this drive that this head has arrived at its home location. Now, one of the big problems we have is that if this interrupter moves forward or backwards, the actual home location, it changes. And then what you can then end up doing is putting in a floppy drive. The floppy drive might be fine, the heads might be fine, everything's fine, but this is then moving its position to what it considers where the data should start on the drive, and the data's not there, and then it says the drive needs formatting. If you do happen to shift this and move it, it's a nightmare getting it back. I'm sure there are special tools that Sony have for getting it back in place, or had, but if you don't have something like that, it's a bit of hit and miss. You've got to undo it, move it a bit, undo it, move it a bit, and each time you've got to, sort of unplug and replug the floppy drive in. And incidentally, the computers don't like it if you unplug the floppy drives and plug them in while the computer is on. So every time you test it, you kind of got to switch the computer off and then move it and then switch it back on again. It is a nightmare. You don't want to have to do it. But having said that, I have resurrected a few drives that way. So, all right, so that's pretty much it. The only other thing is cleaning the heads. And for that, I am going to be able to switch across to the microscope. And I do apologize, I realize at the moment you're looking at blurriness, but that will change. So I've got a Q-tip or cotton bud here with some isopropyl alcohol on it, and I'm just going to pop that in between these two heads here and give that a bit of a clean. Make sure there are no bits of gunk under there. Yeah, that does look like this. Oh, look at the gunk! Dirty. That's extraordinary. Sorry about it all wobbling around, but of course I'm holding this on my hand, and when you are looking at things in a microscope, even the slightest movement gets really wobbly. So look, this is good, how much gunk I'm getting off this. Okay, so I may give that another clean when I finish, but for the moment that will do. Yeah, I mean, you may or may not have seen the amount of, hey GT, how's it going? The amount of gunk that was on this, that Q-tip after giving that a clean. So that's quite promising. All right, so the last thing we need to do is we need to work on this. This is the eject mechanism. And it's fairly straightforward. There's a little motor here that spins around, and inside this little box, there's a little switch. And this cog, as this cog rotates, it actually pushes the switch to let this device know of the position of this. So it knows whether this little sort of, what would you call it, little knob thing sticking out, whether it's at the top or at the bottom. So when it starts spinning around, the switch gets undone, and then when the switch hits again, it knows that it's done one full rotation, and it stops again. So that switching mechanism is inside here. Then underneath this cover are a whole series of cogs that basically change this very fast spinning motor. They translate that into a slower, more powerful drive coming out of this cog here. So I can see a bit of grease on this little cog, so I'm just going to clean that off. And the next thing we need to do is we need to take this cover off. And we do that by, I use my little fine point tweezers here, and I just give this little bit of plastic, there's a little bit of plastic sticking out, so that's really not a very good view, I'm sorry. And then I just bend that out and lift the cover up. That cover then comes up and off like that. And then inside here, excuse me, you'll see the big drive, that main big gear there. That's the one that actually ejects the computer. And then you've got this big cog here, and then you've got this little intermediate cog here, and then you've got the cheese cog here, and then that comes directly from the motor down here. Cheese cog. So let me I can look at this in the microscope. This will probably work in the microscope. I'll probably be able to view most of it. So here we go. Yeah, look at that. That's a reasonable view, wouldn't you say? A little bit on the dark side, but we can still see it. Okay, so we've got under here, we have the motor, the little cog coming straight from the motor. It then transfers its power onto this cog here. This then transfers onto this cog here, which then transfers onto this cog here, and then onto this cog here. And all the time it is actually converting high speed, low power into low speed, high power. So fascinating there. So in order to replace this cog here, this is the cog that's always the problem. It's a different color, and in most cases, often when you open it up, it's also in pieces. This one's still in one piece, but won't be for long. So this cog comes off first, and then this cog comes out afterwards. Now, it's hard to actually demonstrate this, but this is really soft. So if I, you know, just, you could, you probably can't see it very well, but if I mean, I can bend this. See how I can actually bend this cog, as they're just really, really soft. And I think one of the theories behind it is that this was a cog that was specifically designed to potentially break if there was a problem, to protect the other cogs. Now, thankfully, there are resourceful people out there making new ones. So I have got some new cogs here. I keep a fairly good supply of them at any given time. And I'm going to grab one of these cogs, lovely green color, so that we can actually tell that it's been replaced. And there it is. There is our lovely new cog, all ready to go, all made by someone else and ready to be used. And it's wonderful that there are people out there doing that sort of stuff. So always happy about that. Now, the next thing we need to do is clean this. So we've got old grease on there, as you can see. So I'm going to get in here with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol as usual, and gets all that old grease and gunk out. Okay, out she comes. And I'm going to just use my hot air gun very, very briefly just to dry out that residual alcohol. Doing it in a way that it's very, very quick, and I don't actually cause any meltage of plastic, because that would be bad. All right, so we've got that there. Then I'm going to get my new grease. And try not to squeeze the whole bloody tube out of this thing. It's so hard to do this. Just a little bit. Okay, there we go. And then we get our replacement cog, and we drop this in here. Now, I should just mention that I used to buy all of my cogs from one particular supplier, and then I actually found an Australian supplier. They're on eBay. I will put a link in the description later on, that are selling these little green ones. And if you are in Australia, these are so much cheaper than the other ones. So just letting you know. Okay, where do you buy your cogs from? Well, there we go. So there are two different places. There are two different options to buy them from. Now, the first one is there are 3D printed ones. There are links to that in my other video on restoring a floppy drive. You'll find links there. Now, I will be adding links to these ones here, but as I say, this is an Australian supplier. I think they're called Retro Shop Box on eBay. So if you were to jump on eBay and search for a user called, all one word, Retro Shop Box, I'm pretty sure that's it. They sell these cogs here, and they sell them, I think, in packs of 3. And certainly from my perspective, way, 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 way cheaper than buying them from the other place. So anyhow, okay, so that's it there. I am going to put the lid back on, and for that I'm going to go back to my yucky side angle. And I'll just put that lid, slot it in at the bottom there, and then just give it a good click down here to close it. Okay, so that's closed. Now what I can do is I can sort of give this a bit of a test. I'm going to just grab my power supply here for a moment. I'm going to stick some power on one side of the motor and stick some power on the other side of the motor and just see what happens. Nothing. Maybe I'm around the wrong way. Let's check the polarity. No, nothing's happening there. It's using up some amps, but it's not. It's probably a higher voltage than I'm setting. I'm scared to blow it up though. I've got no idea what the voltage of this is. And the floppy drive is 5 volts in it, isn't it? So I would expect this would be 5 volts, but it's not spinning. But I'm not going to give up on it. I think it's still okay. So we'll just see. Okay, so what I would normally do is I would just, hit it with a little bit of voltage. So let's try another one. Here's one I prepared earlier. Here's an old one. No, that's not that one. That's rubbish, that one. Oh, God, they're all rubbish, these ones. Okay, so forget that idea. What about this one? It's the same. Can I make this one spin with a bit of power? Let's see. Whoopsie. Let's try not to create any shorts here. Yeah, that's not moving. Maybe some of them. No, nothing's happening. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm going to just hope for the best and assume that it is okay. If I fire this up and it doesn't work, then we know why. But anyhow, that's now got a new cog in it. That eject mechanism is ready to go inside. So that is pretty much all I can do with that job at the moment, because the rest involves cleaning everything else and then putting it back together. So I'm going to put that to one side. If anyone has any questions about that particular process or procedure, please feel free to ask. That's what I'm here for. That is that. And then I can finally get this SE30's had the works done to it pretty much. It's had the, you know, sort of have everything recapped and then the floppy drive done, and so that's going to be a great little computer for someone when I'm finished with it. Okay, I'm just going to move all this stuff out of the way, put it here where I can find a surface, and I'll keep it all together because it's all from the same computer. Right, now, here is something, it's a bit grubby, but here is something of interest to some, perhaps. It's grubby because it's been up in a cupboard for literally decades. But this. Now, I'm sure most of you, if you're vintage Mac people, know exactly what this is. This is a CD caddy. And basically these were used for the earlier types of CDs. Now, one of the reasons why people used CD caddies in the first place was the idea was that the CD that you used to buy in the early days, CDs were quite expensive to buy. And they were, you know, they were kind of like an asset, really. This thing full of all this data. I mean, you know, this held 650 megabytes worth of data. It was like amazing stuff. You know, you go out and buy your software on it. It was like it was a treasured item. And the idea that the CD player manufacturers had was that people would buy these caddies, they would put the CDs in them, and then they would store them in the caddy. And so that was helping to protect the CD, and then you would take that out and you would be able to just pop it into the drive quickly and easy. And so these were supposed to be a way of actually storing your CDs on a shelf or whatever, rather than having them in a case, taking the CD out, putting it in a tray and loading it. This, the idea is you would just keep them in this and then you just poke it in there. But, and this is where a little bit of stupidity came in, these CD caddies were really expensive. I mean, really expensive. So when it actually came time to people say, oh, you know, you get a CD caddy per disc, people were like, stuff that. And these things, I don't know, they were like 20 bucks each or something stupid like that, possibly even more. It's like, I'm just going to buy one and swap the discs in and out. And so all of a sudden you end up with this, you take the disc out of the case, then put it into this, and then you feed it in, and then you take the disc out of this, put it in the case, get another one, put it, ended up with all this double handling, and these were just pointless. There was no advantage in using a caddy at all, and so that's why the caddy drives kind of died out, and you ended up with tray loading ones. So these, incidentally, are getting a little bit hard to come by these days, but there are still some out there, and chances are, idiots are selling them for ridiculous amounts of money on eBay. That's just what happens. Okay, so I am going to recap a caddy loading CD-ROM drive, and I am going to probably have to go up to the house and fetch it because I don't think it's down here. I mean, I might have brought it down here, but I don't think I did. So I'm going to have to pop up and fetch it. So just give me 2 minutes, folks. I'll be right back with a caddy loading CD-ROM drive. I am back and thank you for your patience. Okay. Right. I found something I'm not stocked up on. Batteries. Da-da. Okay, what have we got here? Right, now let's have a look. Just going to have a quick check here of the situation. All right, I've got 19 viewers at the moment. Thank you to everyone who has joined. For anyone who has sort of missed the intro at the beginning, I basically had a couple of little jobs that I needed to get done today. One was fixing up a floppy drive, which I've done most of it. I've done all I can do at this stage. I've got to then stick it in the ultrasonic cleaner and then add grease to it and put it together. The other job I have to do is to recap one of these, which is a caddy-loading CD-ROM drive. Now, these are actually made by Sony, even though they were obviously in Apple computers. And interestingly enough, they use the same size capacitors as the Apple computers. So if you are recapping logic boards, you will probably have the capacitors for these already. So that's a really handy thing. I do actually have a recapping guide on my website for these. So if you are planning to recap one, if you jump onto Recap a Mac, let me just go in and grab the link. If you are planning to recap one of these, you will find a recapping guide for the Sony CDU 561 caddy-loading CD-ROM drive, and you will find it right here in the chat. There we go. So clicking on that, you will find a guide. So this is one that has the, I'm just going to go into the yucky side view again. This is one that has the, I've got this sled on it already. This one goes in a 660 AV, I think. No. Possibly a 660 AV. Could be a 6100, not sure. Doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, it doesn't really matter what it goes in. It will go into any SCSI computer. Simple as that. Well, that has room for a CD-ROM drive, I should say. So, undoing some screws. That flimsy drink holder thing. Oopsie. Okay, so that comes off, and then we've got our like RF shield, grounding shield thingy on the front. I hate these things. I hate these things. I mean, when you're putting computers back together, are these little bits of metal, they bend and... Okay, now I have done this recently, but I just have to remember it all. So there's a whole bunch of screws that I need to remove. There's two screws to take off this front panel. They're just on the side here. I better get my little screw collection tray because I can see myself getting all messed up. Here's my little screw collection tray. I can put all my screws in as I'm working. Okay, there we go. Off comes the front panel. Easy peasy. Then we've got, there's two screws. There's one here and here. I'm going to undo these next, assuming they're the ones that need to be undone next. Oh, look at that. Too easy. So that just works its way out there. That's good too. So then here's the board here. Two more screws to undo that. Just a little tip, when you're reassembling these, you just have to remember that these two screws go on the outside of that metal plate and these two go underneath it, because it's very easy to just do all four of these up and then you go put the plate back on and it doesn't fit. So that comes off there. And then if you come at it from this side, you've got all these little leads down the side here, and they just need to come out. So you've got two just little wire plugs here. You just sort of push them out with tweezers or a spudger or something like that. Out you come. There's one plug. There's two plugs. Those two plugs come out. And then these two here, ribbon cables, they're these types of plugs where you push... Oh, this one, there's nothing in this one, by the way. There's a third one that's just empty. That's just designed to confuse you. And then you just... There's these little plastic bits that come out the side. How about I jump across to the microscope? This will be easier. to show. So I'm going to whip this out here, and you'll see here. You probably won't, but now, yay, now you see. Okay. So let me just get some focus on that. So these little plastic bits, what happens is they come out like this. They lift up. There we go. One. Come on, this one is stubborn as. Why you do this to me? Okay, is that enough to get this out? Yes, it is. Okay, and then that comes out. But that should really come out an equal distance on both sides. Oh, I know why. I'm pushing it down. Okay, that was my own little bit of sabotage there. Lift that, and then that comes out. Out you come. There we go. All right. So I'm sorry if that was a little bit hard to see. All right, and then we'll go back to here. All right. So now we have the board. That's the board there. Comes away. This is the actual drive mechanism here. That's the head there. I mean, if you want to clean the head, that camera. If you want to clean the heads there, you know, get a little bit of cleaning onto there, you can do that. I have to put this somewhere. How about there? And then this is the board that needs the recapping. Now, as I say, I do have a recapping guide. The thing about this that really sucks, jumping back to the microscope here for a moment, this is the thing I really don't like about recapping these. So it's just a warning to all, if you are planning to recap one of these, is over here we've got 4 capacitors, and they are all just insanely close to each other. So when you go to put replacements on, it's really quite difficult to get your soldering iron in there, because they're, particularly these two, they're really close together. So yes, so the old the microscope is a really important thing. It enables me to do things I simply would not be able to physically do. The sort of micro soldering that I often do, if you're actually, for instance, if you're repairing traces or you're doing incredibly fine wire work, you would not be able to do them without having a microscope. Now, what this microscope does also show us is it shows us we've got some leakage, some quite noticeable leakage around here and around here, which is really not surprising because these are surface mount electrolytic capacitors, and leak is what they do. And then we've got a few more capacitors down here. And so basically what we're looking at, if I can find a printed version of my guide so I don't have to keep referring to the screen. It's in here somewhere. I keep all of my guides here, and it will be in amongst this lot. I know I need a filing system. I admit that. At this particular time, I don't have one though. I mean, other than I can just look it up on the computer anytime. But if I want a printed copy, I have to find it in here amongst all of my guides and schematic diagrams. I feel like I must be getting close now. I mean, I'm seeing computers here I haven't recapped in a long time. Mac 2, haven't done one of those in ages. Anyone want to send me a Mac 2 to recap? I like them. Okay. I must share this some stage. This is a diagram of where all of the pins on the Macintosh SE30 sound chip go, which can actually be very handy at times when you're recapping, because those sound chips, they can be the cause of much grief. Okay, that's the first pile. It wasn't in that pile, so let's now move to the second pile. And it's got to be here. I mean, if it's not here, I can just work off the computer, but I would much prefer to work off paper. This is fascinating stuff, isn't it? Just watching me go through paperwork. Yay! Ah! Found it! Okay, here's my little recapping guide for this particular computer, and this particular CD-ROM drive, and we have 4 100 microfarad 6.3 volt, 3 47 microfarad 16 volt, and 2 10 microfarad 16 volt. As mentioned before, they are all They're all the size. They're all caps that are a similar size to those on Macintosh logic boards. So if you are doing Mac logic board recapping, you will find you probably already have these caps in your collection. Right, so first thing we need to do with any sort of recapping is remove the old caps, and for that I use my trusty hot air station. Now on this particular board there's not a whole lot of plastic around here, so I'm not going to worry about using a heat shield for this one. And I'm just going to apply some heat here to this. I just need to improve my focus situation here, because I can't see anything. There we go, that looks better. Or does it? Okay, how will we focus there? Close enough. Okay, so applying some hot air to this here, you'll see the plastic at the bottom of the cap melt. Now you see all these little solder balls coming out here? That's because this solder has, all of these, the solder around here has developed the crust on top. And then as I heat this and that expands, it starts pushing the molten solder through that crust. And it's one of the real problems with working with old boards. That's one of the reasons why if you are going to use a hot air station on this, you need to be super careful and give the board a good clean afterwards in case there are any little solder balls floating around. So, welcome back, Steve. Oh man, this room now smells like stinky fishy caps. Pooh! Oh man, that one reeks. Oh, yuck. I mean, I've smelled a few caps in my life, but that one takes the cake. Oh, this is going to be a fun recap. Now, one of the things to observe with this particular logic board is it is, welcome Jay, this is a, I'm just going to jump across here to hit, this is a caddy-loading CD-ROM drive board, controller board. This is the Sony one, this is the ones that came out on the really early Macs, and this has some nasty surface mount electrolytic capacitors that do need replacing. It's one of the things that I've actually commented on a few times is, I mean, when we've got these old computers and we're saying, hey, we're going to keep these computers going for as long as possible, we're going to recap them. So yeah, I'm going to recap the logic board, and you go, yay, well done. By the way, you need to recap the power supply. Okay, I'll recap the power supply. Yay, thank you. Oh, by the way, you have to either service or recap the floppy drive. Okay, I'm going to recap the floppy drive. Oh, and you need to recap the CD-ROM drive. Yay, thank you. This computer is now costing me hundreds of dollars. Is it worth it? There is that problem. So, anyhow, I don't think these caps are going to pop, but we'll see. We'll see. We might get lucky. So, this is next to some plastic. So, in come the patented heat shields, which of course aren't really patented, but I'll just say that for fun. And now, I've mentioned this before. I have these things called workshop fairies. Workshop fairies come in during the night and move everything. And they keep moving my heat shields around. So anyhow, I found some. Right. Oh, by the way, just in case anyone ever sees one of... Oh, geez, how about I show you the microscope? Anyone sees any of these? See how that looks like a resistor with color codes on it? It's actually not a resistor. It's an inductor. And you can tell that because it's bright green. So in case you're ever looking at one of those and you think, I'm going to test that, and it doesn't read the way you would expect it to read for a resistor, and you think, oh, I'm just going to go replace that with a new one. Yeah, it's an inductor. So just letting you know. Okay, so do I want to melt the inductor or not? Well, let's see what happens. Okay, heat shield in the way of the plastic. Hot air gun. Let's hit this 47 microfarad 16 volt sucker with all we've got. Incidentally, these caps come off really easily on this board, and I think it's probably, I suspect they might have been using leaded solder on this. Could be wrong. Look at that burned gunk underneath. Tasty. Okay, so... Oh, mate, that stinks. No, I can't blame you for the stink there, Steve. I'm telling you. I don't know why, but this is one of the smelliest boards I have ever worked on. It is just disgusting. Alright, so got 3 in a cluster here. Whenever I have 3 in a cluster, I always like to move them all at once because the board gets warm and it makes the second and third ones easier to remove. As I mentioned, this board is definitely going to need some cleaning because I have got little solder balls flying out everywhere. Let's take this off and off. Just checking to make sure that all these little surface mount components are still surface mounted. But I mean, look at the sponge, would ya? Look at it. Okay. That's those. There aren't actually that many caps on this, so it's not that big a deal, but I need a smaller heatsink for this bit to try and fit it in here. Whoa! Now, this is really difficult because these caps are crammed right, you can't see it here, but these are crammed right between a plastic, IC socket and these little plastic coils here. They've got plastic on either side of them. So I'm plastic everywhere. I mean, I'm virtually doomed. I'm virtually guaranteed to melt things with this. So let's just pop that there. We'll do our best. We can only ever do our best. Okay, I don't need the little springs there. And then I'm going to actually do this. I'm going to change the view of my camera because I am not going to be doing this with the microscope because I've just got such a fine angle to work with here. So I'm going to be trying to apply some hot air down into the little, in between these two bits of metal and trying to get these caps off without melting anything or embarrassing myself or popping. There goes one. He looked like he was going to pop too, and I was about to squeal. Out stem spot. There we go. Now, because I'm not looking at this through the there goes the squeal. Because I'm not looking at this through the microscope, I am not seeing what's going on, so I'm just going to check for damage control now. Now that, anyone see that? Do you reckon there was a component there before? Whoops, no, you can't see that because I'm not on the microscope. Microscope big. There we go, looking in the microscope. Now I think I'm safe. I don't think there was a component there. But it's just the way that's a bit lumpy there. These, of course, have moved from the hot air that I was hitting it with. But let me just check on my guide, and I will see whether I have any component there on my guide. And I am a lucky boy. No component there. So, now, I did manage to lift up this guy, so I'm going to put him back down again. And so I'm going to oh God, look at all the hair on this. Did I tell you that the workshop fairies were hairy as well? There we go. Okay, let's pop some flux down there. And let's get this, and I'm going to run this at a higher temperature, but with a lower force of air, because I don't want to blow these components away. So I really need a little heat shield here as well. So I'm going to get that there so I can push him back down into position. Just like that. And then I need to... Thankfully, one good thing is I do actually have a few of these here at the moment. So if I were to end up losing a component, I can generally find out what that component was or what I should be looking for or what position it goes in by looking at one of my other ones. So, well, what is it that time? What the hell is that? Okay. Just get some, there we go. Nice fresh solder on that joint. Looking nice. Looking very tasty now. Geez, my microscope's getting a bit smeary, isn't it? It's that bloody camera angle. I've got to try and make a more permanent fix to that. Okay, so let's just have a quick look here. I don't know, modern electronic caps will leak in 24 years like these have. This is correct. So electrolytic caps are the problem. As long as you are using a liquid electrolyte, there is a chance that it will leak. Now they're probably going to last longer these days with the sort of manufacture, but who knows? Excuse me, if you are replacing, and this is obviously one of the reasons why I use tantalum capacitors for this, because they don't leak, but if you did want to use a like more of an aluminium type capacitor, there are ones that you can use, and I can't even remember what they're called. I will look them up for you, but there are ones that don't have liquid in them. Instead of a liquid electrolyte, they use I think it's a powder, and you can often tell these on modern boards because they've got coloured markings on them, bright coloured markings on them. But yeah, but anyhow, I'm going to use tantalum caps on this, and everyone will be happy. So let's now. This might be the best microscope cam I've ever seen. Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. It's the best one I've seen today. Okay, so let's pop that on there. Let's pop that on there. So I need to take these off, but of course I am concerned about losing those components. So I'm going to probably come at it from this angle here, blowing the air in this direction. And then I'll just be very, very careful. I'm going to probably run this with the lower air speed, higher temp, so that I don't push some of those components away. So just getting this cap hot. I do expect this one to explode, but even though I am protected by this microscope, I will probably still squeal. But you know what? It's all part of doing it for the live stream, yeah? This is taking a lot longer, obviously, because I am using a lower temp, but you can see why when you look at those little components on the left there. They're all wiggling around. Let's just get rid of that one. Ooh, that was a puff. A puff. Still smoking. Look at it. Yeah. That's popped in there. So, okay. Now let's just check for fallout here, because during that process I wouldn't be surprised if I lost a component. So let's just go in and have a look. It looks like everything is here. This thing's definitely gone for a wander. And there, and there, and there. Yep, everything does appear to be there. That there, I've mentioned this before, just for those playing along at home. Right, so what do we got here? Good quality ones from reputable makers. Yeah, I mean, look, when it comes to the sort of capacitors you use to replace them with, I really don't actually see a problem if you decide to go with replacing the electrolytics with electrolytics. At the end of the day, we're talking about computers here that this leakage has occurred over a span of like about 25-30 years, and you have to ask yourself, you know, in 25 or 30 years, am I really going to be concerned about the capacitors in my old vintage Mac? Am I still going to be interested? Or maybe I'll just be happy to recap them again. Or maybe the caps that they're making these days will last longer than that. We just don't know. So, okay, quick little look here. Quick little check of what's going on here. Yep, no worries. I've still got enough people here to keep going. So, all right. So that's all looking okay. As I mentioned before, I've got a few little solder balls here, so this will need a good clean afterwards. And that's basically all the caps off. So now we just got to do is clean them up and replace them. So, you know, obviously my cleaning process is pretty much always the same. I get a little bit of flux on here. I put a little bit of new solder. I clean them up until the pads look like they are accepting solder from corner to corner. I don't want just one little bit of the pad accepting solder. I want the whole pad ready to take solder. I better do something about these at some stage as well. As you can see, this little resistor has gone for a wander thanks to my hot air station. So I might just hit that with a bit of air now and move him back. And, you know, probably melt plastic at the same time. I mean, you know, it's sort of, does it really matter if you have melted plastic on a CD-ROM drive controller board? I mean, in theory, you're never even going to see it. because it's inside. I mean, it's all screwed inside there. Does it really matter? Probably not, but you know. Just don't buy Chinese, Japanese, and UK made ones are way more reliable. Yes, I mean, look, you can't really go wrong. Well, you probably can, but I would recommend that if you are going to buy replacement caps, buy Panasonic brand. They're a reputable brand. They're well known. You know, if you're going to buy replacement ones of these, little surface mount electrolytic, buy Panasonic. You know, that's what I hear is that is the way to go. So that's what I do. If I'm doing it, I do have a few customers that specifically ask for me to replace them with electrolytic capacitors because they want the boards to look the same as they did. And for those ones, I use Panasonics. So, cleaning time. Let's start with this one. This is probably the easiest one to access. Let me find my solder. There it is. It is that one there. Lots of black gunk. Yummy, yummy, yummy. Okay. Okay, you can see as I keep applying heat and just very gentle circular motion here, that black stuff is slowly disappearing. I need more flux on this. That flux is just burning away. Okay, we keep going until we basically see that pad is, you know, accepting solder. Some of the black stuff, if it's not coming off, I will then have to either scrape it off or use a little bit of solder wick. So I'm going to try solder wick first. So this is my solder braid. Links for pretty much everything I use in the description of the video. So if there's anything you see here and you think, yo, I want to go and buy one of those, use the link. Please use the link. Incidentally, those who might have watched some of my streams before may recall that in one of my streams I snapped my soldering tip in half. This is now a brand spanking new Hacko soldering tip, and it's beautiful. It works really well. I've been using my Chinese knockoff tip during this troubled time while I wait and replace my soldering iron tip. And using that knockoff one has really made me appreciate the genuine article. It works, but this one works better. Okay, just cleaning up these pads. You may notice that when I actually do a lot of this cleaning, a lot of the, you know, other solder mask and some of the screen printing and everything is coming off. This is not a particularly well-made board. It's not like one of the Apple boards, which is actually made quite, you know, the Apple boards, they are quite well made, certainly the ones of this vintage. This one here is a pretty cheap, shoddy sort of board. So, sorry, Sony. Okay. Okay, there we go. Cleaning up, looking good. Right, so let's hit that now with a Q-tip with a bit of isopropyl alcohol. We've got to get it clean, make sure it doesn't have coronavirus. Okay. Getting all that black stuff away. And as you can see, as we remove all of the gunk, what we basically end up with is two nice, clean, ready-to-use pads. Ready for new components to go on. And look at the gunk. Look at the gunk. Appreciate the gunk. Yeah, so these ones really did have a lot of burned gunk at the bottom. Interestingly enough, I don't think I've even tested this drive to see if it worked, but I just know these ones need recapping, so I just whipped it straight out, ready for recapping. So, there we go. That's looking a lot better. There's still a little bit of gunk down here. You can see that the corrosion is actually working its way underneath that. Where's my scalpel? I don't know where my scalpel is. Bear with me. Just a second. Can't be without my scalpel. Ta-da! Scalpel. So, yeah, you can see the corrosion is sort of getting in underneath this solder mask here. It's going to scrape that, you know, clean a little bit. I'll put new solder on that when I put the component on. Shiny copper underneath, that's what we want to see. Nice shiny copper. I'm going to just hit this stuff here with a bit of a toothbrush. I mean, this is all going to get cleaned in the ultrasonic, but my goodness, look at that. Look at how scudgy they are. Nasty. Nasty. Right. Might even try and clean up some of those joints. They do look that bad. Okay, so now we need to get to these two. I'm going to have to come at these from the side angle because they're all sandwiched in between things. So we get some flux on here. And we get some new solder, and we just clean these up. And I am doing the hardest ones first, so it will get a little bit quicker after this. There we go, look at that. Oh, they're looking really good. Okay. Alright. Let's now take that solder off, and as I have mentioned before, it always seems very counterintuitive to put solder on and then take it off again. But basically what we want to end up with is lovely clean pads ready to put the new components on. And one of the ways I get those clean is by adding new solder on. So the solder actually becomes like a tool for cleaning. I'm able to get it, you know, sort of hot and molten. I can rub it around on these pads, and that combination of heat and rubbing helps to clean those pads off. Oh, it's just started raining here. I can hear the sound of the rain. Lovely. Okay, let's get some more isopropyl alcohol on here and clean it up and make it look pretty. There we go. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Lovely. Lovely. Lovely clean ones. Okay. So that's nice. We've now got, there's one little guy floating over here. We're going to do the floater. Okay. Let's get that there. Well, it's actually raining quite heavily now. Good night, Krishna. Thank you for watching. I'm sorry I went too long. Happens. Okay. So, solder on. Cleaning. This one here looks pretty grubby. Incidentally, if any stage I ever expose any raw copper, you need that to be coated with something. You do one of two things. You either tin it, you know, get solder on the surface, or you put like a, you know, sort of a coating on it, like a UV solder mask. If you leave just straight copper exposed without any sort of coating on it, it will corrode. Okay. That's one. That was a nice easy one, wasn't it? Just check the focus on here. I feel like I'm drifting in and out of focus there. Or is that just me? Maybe it's because it's Sunday. It's Sunday here, by the way. If you are in a different part of the world and it's not Sunday, let me tell you that it's a good Sunday, so it's something to look forward to. Okay. Where are we? Not a recapping Tosh today. No, it's a recapping CD today. It's I mean, it's out of a Macintosh, but it is a CD. Yes, I mean, the as much as possible, I do like to make it so that when I am restoring Macs, I am restoring the whole thing, so that the whole thing still works. Now these ones here, that one there, C220, don't need to do that one because it doesn't have a component on it. It is what they often refer to on the Macintosh schematics as no stuff. So it's a spot for a capacitor, but there is not meant to be one there. So we've got our flux on here, we get our solder on, look at that little solder ball. This one's nice and grubby, look at that. My word. Okay. Probably can't see that one I'm working on at the moment. Yep. I have mentioned this before, but my microscope allows me a much larger field of view than is captured by the camera. So often I'm just busily doing things here, and then I look up and I realize you can't see what I'm doing. And so for that I apologize. My God, this smells. I mean, it really smells. Okay, this one needs a little bit more flux up here. And let's just keep going and see if we can bring him back to life. Oh, he's looking better with that flux. Flux is magical stuff. In case you're someone who doesn't really know what flux is or the purpose it serves, I do have a learning to solder tutorial on the in the featured sections of my videos, and in that I give quite a practical demonstration of the difference between using flux and not using flux. The short story is that it is about halting the oxidation or oxidization, depending on what part of the world you come from, halting the oxidization process and making it so that the solder will flow nicely. You can see how sort of wobbly this is. See how it's all very liquid as I move my soldering on over it. It's very, very liquid. Now, without flux, it develops a film on the outside, and that film stops it from flowing well. It sort of starts to get all stringy and sort of, yeah, it's a lot harder to work with. So that is why we use flux. We use flux to help getting a really nice, smooth, molten solder and getting lovely, clean, shiny joints. Okay. You. Going. Yep, I think that'll be enough. All right. You don't run a vent filter. Well, I do when I'm not live streaming, but I don't. It's not on. I mean, it's on, but it's not on. Here we go. I do, but you'll probably notice that now that I've switched that on, the noise that it's going through the microphone there. So I don't use that when I'm live streaming, but I do use it when I'm just working out here by myself. What I do have here, though, is this fan. You may or may not be able to see. There's a fan here, and this particular fan is blowing air across me like that. So as the fumes come up, they waft away that way. And then, of course, I'm in actually an outdoor shed here with very, very good ventilation and the front door open, and I get lots of fresh air in here. So it is not necessarily an ideal situation, but it is certainly better than just sort of like sitting there soldering in a bedroom or something like that. But I don't know why I get these headaches. No, I'm only joking. Incidentally, when you do see the smoke, and again, if you've watched my streams before, you'll probably heard me say this before. When you see this smoke, that smoke is not solder. That is, smoke is not lead fumes. This is leaded solder I'm using, by the way. This is the fumes are actually the flux burning away. It's still bad for you, but just in case you were thinking like, ooh, lead fumes, you're not really in danger of getting lead fumes using leaded solder. You are more likely to have trouble touching the lead and then potentially, touching your eyes or touching your mouth and getting the lead in you that way. Lead needs to be at an incredibly high temperature before it actually starts to create fumes. But, as I've said before, I mean, everything in this hobby has dangers associated with it, whether it be the heat or whether it be electricity or whether it be, toxic fumes. I mean, all of this stuff is bad. So you just have to be careful. You have to take precautions wherever you can. I actually had someone once say to me, said, oh, look, my son's interested in getting into this. And, whoops, I lifted a pad. So interested in getting into this, and I said, look, that's great, I'm more than happy to teach him, but just be aware that this is a really dangerous hobby. And his son was very young, I might add. This is a very dangerous hobby, and there are lots and lots of dangers associated with it. So you need to be aware of that if that is what you want your kid to be doing. And I'm more than happy to teach all the safety procedures and all the proper precautions and all that sort of stuff. But, don't think that this is like, I don't know, going out and building Lego or something like that. There are real dangers associated with this. And interestingly enough, that was the last I ever heard him on that subject. I mean, I wasn't trying to scare him away, but I definitely felt like he needed to be well informed on the matter. This is really grubby, isn't it? Hello, dysfunctional wombat, also known as Aaron or Aaron. Sorry, I like saying that. I love the Key and Peele sketch. I'm sure you all know it. And anytime anyone I know is like, you know, Denise or Aaron or whatever, any of those names that are mentioned in it, I just can't help myself. Okay. Oh, let's go on. Okay. More cleaning, more cleaning. This is the boring part, but it has to be done. Got to get these pads nice and clean of all this old gunk, because as I've, again, this is stuff that I have mentioned in my streams before, when it comes to putting new components onto pads, you know, you will get a much better join if everything is clean. So clean, 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 clean. Make sure it is all squeaky clean, and it will just make the next part of the process way, way easier. What may we be recapping today? What we are recapping on this particular day is a controller board for a caddy-loading CD-ROM drive out of an old Macintosh. So this has a few little, over this end, a few little surface mount electrolytic capacitors on this board have leaked terribly. They've been removed. The pads are now clean. I'm ready to stick the new ones on. So it's not actually a Mac, but it is something out of the Mac. So let's go. Now, as usual, I like to do the hard bits first. So I'm going to do these ones first. These are the ones that are crammed right up next to each other. Now, I do have a little tip for this one here, and that is that these capacitors, all four of them, are 100 microfarads, 6.3 volts. Now, normally when I buy those, I buy them as 7.3 millimeter in length. Is it just me, or does it look a bit stroby? Oh no, that's all right. So I normally buy these as 7.3 millimeters in length, which is about that size. Let me just put that under the microscope, and you can see. Oh God, look at all the fluff on there. So here's my capacitor, and here's where they would go. Round the wrong way. Round the wrong way. Right. Boop. Boop. Right. So there's a capacitor sitting there. Now, as you can see the size of that, and you can see the grief that was going to give me if I'm trying to solder that together. So what I actually have specific for this job are these. These are capacitors of the same rating, but are like 6 millimeters in length. Just that little bit of extra space makes this job far easier. Now, in case anyone is ever trying to decode the numbers on these, I've found generally one of the easiest way to remember is that just think of 6. Okay, so look at the first two numbers, 1, 0. The last number is a 7. The 7 refers to how many zeros should appear after the first two numbers. So that should be 1, 0, and then 7 zeros after it. And that's in picofarads. Now, 1 million picofarads is 1 microfarad. So essentially, if you've got 6 zeros at the end, you know that it is the number is the exact rating. And let me just demonstrate that quickly. I'm going to grab here a 47 microfarad capacitor. I'm going to need it later, so I may as well grab it. If we have a look at this, you'll see that it is 476. So that means it's 47 with 6 zeros on the end. So 47 million picofarads, and a million picofarads is 1 microfarad. So that tells you 476 is 47 microfarads. Now this one is 107. So that means it's essentially 6 zeros plus another 0. So what you can do with this, you can say, okay, well, it's 10, it's like 100 million sort of picofarads, so it's 100. So I can say this is a 7, so I know that this is 10 plus another 0 microfarads. So I hope that made sense. I felt like the further I got into that, the less sense it made. So I apologise. All right. So I'm going to put the little one. Here it is. All right. So let's. Okay, Steve. You better not be heading off to recap your LC2. Because I want to see that. I want to see that. Okay, so let's get some caps on here. And what I will do is, again, I'm using these little guys. They're a lot easier to put into this little confined space. And I need another one. And one more. What have we got there? What am I looking at? Oh, damn these old eyes. That's the right one. Okay, so that's that one there. Let's get another little one. I have big ones and little ones. Let's get another little one. And we'll plonk that there. Great. Right. I wonder if these caddies sell good nowadays. Literally have a box of them in storage. Might be able to make a sale on them. Yeah, look, my recommendation would be, yes, probably sell them. I regularly have people saying to me, hey, where can I get caddies? And I say, jump on eBay, have a look there. And sometimes people are charging silly money for them. I mean, not that they're selling them for silly money, but there are some people asking silly money for them. So yeah, look, if you're not using those caddies, I would say you would be doing your the Mac community a service by making them available. Okay, just getting some solder on there. That's all nice and neat and tidy. I'm going to come at the other one from the other angle because I've got good access, and then I'll do the two middle ones together. Doing the two middle ones is harder to access, and as I've always said in my videos, do the easy side first and do the hard side second. So the easy side first, just to get the capacitor in place, like that. Oh, by the way, if anyone's wondering, hey, how do you know which way around they go? The stripe on the capacitor goes to positive, and the beveled edges on this silk screening indicate which side is positive. So I basically need this stripe pointing to the beveled edge side. As you can see, these are pointy edges, and these ones are beveled edges. So there we go. Jonathan Goldman is selling them for $100 a piece. Yes. A big shout out to Jonathan Goldman and his expensive caddies and Quadra 950 and whatever else. Good luck to him and his sales. Right. I have got to get solder in here. I can't do that with the microscope there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the side angle. And I'm going to get my reading glasses. Because I'm very old, you see. I can't quite see that well. I can't see so badly that I can't see where I put my reading glasses. Here they are. These are little clip-on reading glasses here, like this. And they will allow me to get in close to this for what I'm about to do. So I just added some solder and I just got rid of it again. So get some solder onto the tip of my soldering iron. And then I'm going to just go straight down here and make a pretty solder joint. And then I'm going to flip around the other side and do the same here. Ooh. Let's go and have a look at those under the microscope now and see if they're any good. Sure. No worries, though. See ya. Okay. It's the Google Glass 3. Yeah, that's right. I was actually commenting the other day with the old Google Glass. Isn't it amazing the way we see them everywhere these days? When they came out, it's like, yeah, they're going to change the world. And it's just like everywhere you turn, there are people wearing Google Glasses now, aren't there? It's me being sarcastic. Okay, so there are the two capacitors on there. As you can see, having them as being a little bit smaller really helps with the soldering those on, with the, if you can actually see in the microscope, with the amount of space we have in here, having them as really small capacitors makes life a lot easy. Oh yes, Jay is a huge fan of Jonathan Goldman's. Right. Okay, so now we're going to do these ones here. Now, I can probably just use the normal size ones for this because it's not quite as crammed. So they're the same size. They are 100 microfarad. What was it? What did I say? 6.3 volts. Sounds right. Yeah, 100 microfarad, 6.3 volts. So let's grab the bigger ones and let's see that we can fit those on there. Right. Right. Yeah, I've got room there. I'm happy with that. And oh yeah, oh, it's really raining now. Really raining. What time is it? 3:23. 3:23 p.m. here in Sydney land. So it's still not quite late enough for me to grab a drink of Go Fast juice, but for anyone who hasn't seen my video on my fastest recapping in the world, I use Go Faster juice to help me recap faster. Okay. These are offset, as you can see, so I'm not really too concerned about making them all line up because they were never designed to line up. And once again, no one's ever going to see this once it's all sealed up. Right, so I do that side, and now we do this side. And that's all good. Incidentally, if you ever happen to see on a board, I'm just going to do that one there so you can actually see it. If you ever happen to see on a board a little resistor like this one, yawning time is upon us. No, not yet. Not while I'm doing this. No, sir. No, seriously, no. I'll be fine. I'll be fine. I'm all energetic. Okay, so this here, you can see it's a resistor. Well, you maybe don't know, but it looks like a resistor. It's green and it has 000 on it. What that means, it has no resistance whatsoever. It is a jumper. So that there, I could actually take that off and just replace it with a piece of wire. I'm not going to, but I could, because that is a 0 ohm resistance resistor, which really stops it from being a resistor. It becomes a jumper. So that's 4 capacitors on, and so they are the difficult ones. So from my perspective, I feel like the job is, nearly done. So that's great. 4 caps on there. Then we've got our one little guy living here, and he is a 10 microfarad 16 volt. But that is not as common on the Macs, but it is on some of them. One of them I think has heaps of them. Oh, it's the LC2 and LC3 and LC. Those joyous ones that Steve loves to recap. I think they've got 10 microfarad 16 volt caps all over them. And they are little. Okay. M. And once again, referring to my code for working out what the rating is by looking at the code on the cap. That's 106. So 10 with 6 zeros. So that's 10 million picofarads, which is 10 microfarads. So there you go. As you can see, this capacitor is virtually the same size as the pad it's going onto. So I'm going to have to do my skillful stuff here. Right. Okay. How are we going? I'm just going to go check on my my viewer status. I imagine that a few have dropped off since last time. Oh, yep, a few have dropped off, but I still have 15, and I thank you to those 15 for persevering. This is the stream is nearly done because I am only going to be recapping this board, and then that will be it for today. I have other work that I need to do, not in this workshop. Take advantage of the weekend as much as possible. So I have attached this one side. As you can see, when I give that a nudge, one side wiggles and the other side doesn't. So that's in place. And then we'll do the same from the other side. So even though we don't have much room on either side of the pad, we can still get that soldered on Oh, look at this guy. Look at this upstart of a capacitor right here, making it so I can't get in. There we go. There we go. That is on securely. So there we go. Soldered on both sides. Jazzed up on Dr. Pepper. I gotta tell you, maybe it's an Australian thing, that I do not like the taste of Dr. Pepper. Now, having said that, of course, it's not that readily available out here. You can, I think, sometimes get it like in the international aisle of the grocery store. But yeah, it's not my first choice of flavour. But then again, we do eat Vegemite, so, you know, go through that stuff by the truckload. Nothing like a little bit of leftover beer yeast in a spread on your toast. Right, I need another one of these 10 microfarad 16 volt. About as bad as Pepsi. Yes, I have to say, we do definitely have Pepsi readily available out here, but I have to say I'm definitely a Coke person. But I very, very, very rarely drink Coke. But I just, every now and again, I have it and I go, yeah, I love this stuff. Yes, I do eat Vegemite. I do eat Vegemite. And I do love Vegemite. And I do not recommend it to anyone. If you've never tried it, don't try it. I promise you won't like it. I would be flabbergasted if anyone who tried Vegemite and had never tried it before, like as an adult, would taste it and go, yeah, that's darn good. No, it's not. That's not how it goes. People, they taste it and they go, oh my god, this tastes like, you know, foul, salty goo. Okay. Once again, I've got this one here where I don't have a whole lot of room. I can't even see whether I'm getting the solder to the pad underneath. Yes, I am. That's on securely, so you didn't see that at all. There we go. So let's do that again. He's secured. He's secured in place. Dr. Pepper is quite sweet. I can understand why it's not your favourite. Yes, I mean, of course, it was something made famous by good old what's his name, Tom Hanks in what was that movie? Forrest Gump. It was like after that movie came out, before it came out, it was never available here at all. But after the movie came out, there were, I think, enough people saying, hey, what is Dr. Pepper? And it started to become available. I'm sure Tom Hanks has got some lovely things to say about Australia at the moment, given the fact that he came out here to shoot a movie and got coronavirus. We like to extend the special treatment to all of our famous international guests come to Australia and get COVID-19. Okay. Fluxy, fluxy, fluxy. So, okay, what is Vegemite? So Vegemite is a savoury spread for putting on toast. It is made from, it was originally made from leftover brewer's yeast. So when when brewers were making beer, they would end up with all this leftover yeast. It then got used, sort of cooked up and turned into this savoury spread. It's got an incredibly high salt content. I mean, the stuff is so salty, it's unbelievable. And it's got this kind of malty sort of flavour about it, and it's black, completely and totally black. And Australians eat it, and I don't know that anyone else in the world does. I mean, I think the Poms have like Marmite or something like that, which I think is possibly similar. But yeah, and it's very, very high in vitamin B. That's their claim to fame. It's like, yeah, you have this stuff, it's great for you. but it's not. It's not great for you at all because it is just so high in salt. But I love the stuff. But the most important thing you need to remember is if you are going to spread it on something, you don't spread it on like peanut butter. You put the most incredibly fine film of the stuff down because it is just so strong and salty. It come from a land down under. The irony is that the lead singer of that song, Colin Hay, he's Scottish. Okay, it's oh look at this. I've got a crooked cap. Let's see if I can uncrooked it. I'm just busily here recapping. Have any questions? Please feel free to jump into the chat. I can recap and answer questions at the same time. Magical skills like that. Okay. Yes, it was a hit during the 80s, and it did become an international hit, which was quite amazing. We were surprised, I have to say. It is really raining there. Yes, it is. It is pissing down. And of course, I've got a metal roof here, so you're going to hear all the big drops. So, yeah, no, that's just raindrops. But because the rain is hitting the fig tree, they then come down in bigger drops, and so that's why you're hearing those loud noises from every now and again. Name of the band, yes, Men at Work. It was Men at Work. It was there. Yeah, where women glow and men plunder. Can you hear that thunder? You better run, you better take cover. Interesting thing is they ended up actually getting sued over that song because of a little piece that the flute was playing. Saying sounded like another traditional Australian song. Kookaburra sits in the old gum tree. And if you ask me, not that anyone did ask me, but I thought that was nonsense and totally unfair. Right, so what am I going to do here? I can't fit a soldering iron in there. Do I take the inductor out? I think I might take the inductor out. I'm going to do a better job if I do that. So I'm going to flip him over on the other side, and we're going to suck some solder out here using a solder sucker. Okay. Here we go. I haven't had lunch today. I'm starting to get a bit hungry. This will definitely have to mean the stream doesn't go for too much longer. Can't compete with the hunger. Boop. Out comes the solder. Just lift out one end and stand up. Yes, I could do that, but I actually think it's going to be easier to just remove it. If I have to be totally harnessed. Bonk. Bonk. Will you look at that solder sucker? Yeah, there's a lovely shiny new one upstairs. Okay, off comes the inductor, and here comes this. I promise I will get to the post office very soon, Jay. You're going to need to resend me your address. You sent it to me such a long time ago that it'll be so far back in the chat it'll probably take me a week to find it. Because I must say that us Mac Yackers, for those who are not familiar with Mac Yak, and I'm sure most of the people watching at the moment are familiar with Mac Yak, if you're not familiar with it, just do a Google search of Mac Yak, M-A-C-Y-A-K. You will find a website and a YouTube channel. We get together and yak about Mac stuff once a week, and we have a Apple message little sort of what would you call it, group chat that we have running, and my goodness, it is one active chat. Okay, there we go. That's one last cap. Wasn't that a 107? That is a very good question. No, it wasn't. So I've got, let's get the cheat sheet. I don't even know if you'll be able to see this, but I'm going to jump across to here. Cheat sheet. And we've got here, we've got 47, 47, 10, 47. And so I've got here, say, whoopsie, say 47, 47, 10, 47, and then nothing there. So thank you for checking. I always like to have an extra pair of eyes looking over these things. It's good to have people sort of checking your work, but yes, that is the correct cap on there. So now we just have to put our inductor back in place. Yeah. In we go. Boom. There we go. Yeah, those pins have bent a little, so they'll stay in. I shouldn't need to worry too much. Whoops. There's my cheat sheet. It's gone for a walk. Yes, no, Bill, I do appreciate, I always appreciate if someone thinks they've seen something that I've stuffed up, by all means jump out, because, you know, I'm only human. I do stuff up. Oh, he fell through. I generally don't use flux when I'm doing through-hole stuff. There's enough flux in the what do you call it, the solder itself. So just obviously, if you're wondering why I'm not coating it with flux at the moment, through-hole stuff, as I say, I just think, I mean, look at that lovely neat joint. Oh, you can't see it because it's out of focus. There you can focus. Look at that nice neat joint there. No need for any additional flux other than what was in the solder. There we go. Just making sure that's nice and tight. And ow, I just burned my finger. Okay. Now, I might just, actually, I don't really need to bother about cleaning this. It's going to go in the ultrasonic. So let's just have a quick look here. We can see there is the inductor back. It's a little bit crookeder than it was before, but that's okay. It's a little bit further away from the capacitor, so I have no objection to that. Right, well that, we will just have a quick little check here. So again, we have 4 100 microfarad 6.3 volt. That's this little cluster up here. As you can see, I've got 2 of the 7mm ones and 2 of the 6mm. I use 6mm here because because these are crammed so close together, it just makes it far easier to put them on. So that's there. I was going to just tidy up these joints a smidge, wasn't I? So how much is a smidge? Is that a metric smidge or an imperial smidge? Alright, so let's clean these up a metric smidge. So I'm probably going to end up using a smaller tip, soldering iron tip for that. This is my big tip. I've got a little tip, or I might even use a little like knife type tip. We'll just see. I just need to be able to get in there. Actually, I think the knife might work out better. So let's just try this guy. When you're working with soldering irons, one of the really important things is getting the heat where you need it. And that's one of the reasons why just a pointy soldering iron can be a bit of a problem, because right up at the tip there, you can't get much heat. So with this here, I've got flat surfaces. You can see I've actually got flat surfaces on either side, but I do have a tip as well. And so with this, I can kind of get this in here, but I can lay it flat to kind of get more surface area onto what I'm soldering. And the more surface area you have, the more heat you're going to get and the better solder you're going to get. So let's douse liberally in flux. Let's get some fresh solder here, and let's get in here and see if we can just make these joints look a little bit tastier. Create a bridge there, see that? How did you like that? Bridge too far. Okay. There we go. These ones aren't too bad, I'm not going to worry about those. So I'm just going to sort out this bridge. When you end up with a little bit too much solder, straighten that resistor just a hair. Which one? Which one? Which one? actually, that bridge doesn't matter because they're actually joined together. So, bridge okay. So, there we go. Oopsie. Right. So that's okay. I'm just happy with those joints. It's not about making them perfect, just making them looking a little bit better. Now, which resistor? Which resistor? Which one? This one? Are you talking about the jumper, the 0001? He's straight enough. He's straight enough. I'm happy with him. These two here are nice and straight. Yeah. I'm content. That's all good. So let's just hit this with a little bit of isopropyl. Actually, I wonder if I should try a little bit of Jay's special sauce. I'm going to try a little bit of Jay's special sauce on this. Jay sent me some special sauce. I want to see how well this cleans. I've never used special sauce for cleaning, so I'll just try some here. Oh, hang on. Ooh, there's special sauce. Oh, it stinks. Jay's sauce stinks. But it works. Wow. That's sure cleaning. Yeah, I like it. Okay. I didn't scroll up enough. Scrolling up, scrolling up, scrolling up. Using the example for your humor. Ah! I am seeing. I thought that might have been the case, but at the same time, I was also concerned that there may have been a crooked one on here. So, you know, I was torn between, is this just humor? Or have I stuffed something up? Okay. Wow, this special sauce is amazing. Oh, love it. It looks way too liquid to be special sauce. Well, maybe it's a slightly different special sauce to your special sauce. It is special sauce, but you know, it's different special sauce. Okay, just looking around, looking around. My ultrasonic cleaner's still not up to temp, so I can't clean this yet. But that, I think, is pretty much it for the stream. Unless anyone has any questions or would like any demonstrations of anything, which I can do. If Jay sent you special sauce, I would avoid touching it. Yes, very sound advice. Sound advice. All right, so this is basically the recapped board now. I'm not going to test this because it does need a very, very good clean, and I'm not going to obviously bore everyone while this sits in the ultrasonic cleaner getting cleaned, and then I will put this all back together and we'll test it out and see how it goes. I'll probably clean the heads of the CD-ROM drive as well, which I'll just quickly put under the microscope. Where did I put them? Oh, they're right there. So if I just whip this out here quickly, and I go here to microscope, and if we go to there, that's the little lens for the laser for the CD-ROM drive. Now, I'll be honest, it looks pretty darn clean. I'm not going to really bother cleaning that at all. I suspect I'd probably end up doing more damage trying to clean that, so I'm going to leave that as is. So recap the board, we'll just leave it at that. I think that should be enough. What fluid do you use in your ultrasonic cleaner? Sorry, I have trouble reading. So the fluid I use is one that I buy locally, and it is called Electro by a company called CleanTech. As I say, they're up here in I think sunny Queensland from memory, which is the state north of us. Now, as you can see, I'm running very low. At the time I bought this, which is a long time ago, because this is a concentrate, and so this has lasted me ages. But at the time I bought this, I had a lot of trouble finding ultrasonic fluid out here. Now there are lots of places that sell it now. There is, I use RS Components here in Australia. It's a place where I buy all my components and stuff from. They sell ultrasonic cleaning fluid. Even my local down the road electronics shop, a place called J-Car here in Australia, even they sell ultrasonic cleaning fluid nowadays. So If you are wanting to get some, you need to make sure it is one specifically designed for cleaning flux and printed circuit boards, because they're designed so that they will get rid of things like flux and stuff off the board, but they won't do any damage to the components or to the board itself. Branson EC is the one that I've heard recommended in the US. But there, again, there are other ones available in Australia as well. But anyhow, this is the one that I'm currently using, called Electro. And it works great. It works really, really well. You pop it in the ultrasonic cleaner and things come out absolutely spotless and clean. So that is the one that I use, but it's not necessarily sort of one that is better or worse than any others out there. So can you talk about the ultrasonic cleaner? Is it water? What are the temps, etc.? I'm not super hip to them, and not what you have. Okay, so ultrasonic cleaner. There is a link in the description as to the one that I use. It is a cheap Chinese knockoff. It is not one of the super fancy ones. It's a 10 litre. 10 litre, I don't know what that is in the old money, but it is a 10 litre a bath, which is big enough for most of the boards that I do. Not all of them. If I want to clean, say for example, I have got here a Macintosh 2VX board. If I stick one of these in there, I have to do it in 2 halves. It's too big. But for most of these boards that I do, certainly for this one, there's plenty of room inside it. Now, the ultrasonic cleaner inside it, it is filled with distilled or demineralized water. And the reason for that is that when the water kind of dries away, if you are left with minerals and stuff on there, they are actually very bad for the components, and they can encourage corrosion and all that sort of stuff. So it is really, really good if you're doing any sort of cleaning with any of this stuff to use distilled or demineralized water. It's so cheap, you can just buy it from your normal grocery store, and you can just use it to wash things down. So any sort of cleaning. So basically what I use with this is I use distilled water mixed with that ultrasonic cleaning fluid. I have the temperature set usually between 50 and 60 degrees Celsius, and I generally clean things for around about 5 minutes per side. So I'll put a board in, unless it's really grubby, I might go up to 10 minutes. So a board like this, there's not much on this side, so I'll probably do this side for about 5 minutes. I might do this side for 10 because there's quite a bit of gunge on this one. So there are very expensive ones out there. I mean, there are huge ones out there. There are ones that are big enough for cleaning like car motors and stuff like that. Huge ultrasonic cleaners. And there are very, very expensive ones. There are ones where they actually use rotating frequencies. So they actually vary the frequency while they're cleaning. And apparently they clean far more effectively. Mine does not do that. What I would recommend is, if you are getting a cleaner, make sure it is a big enough tub to hold the things you want to clean. That's obviously one really important thing. Make sure that it has a heater, because they will clean more effectively if they can heat, especially when you're cleaning things like flux. Because when flux gets sort of warmed up in the water there, it gets a lot more fluid and comes off a lot more easily. If I was to do this in a cold cleaner, that flux would be a lot harder to remove, a lot harder to shift. So make sure it has a heater, and make sure it's big enough. And then obviously make sure that if you are buying a fluid which is sort of a concentrate, dilute it with distilled water. That's the way to go. So that's what I would have to say about the ultrasonic cleaner. I personally don't think you need to go super expensive with them. So, did the 2FX board fit in yours? If that's a question for me, I've never had a 2FX board here. I've had a Mac 2 board, and no, that didn't fit. I had to do that in 2 halves. Yeah, I had to do that one in 2 halves. That was a nightmare, actually, that board. That was a real pain in the neck getting it clean. But anyhow, I got it done. My cleaner money holds 7 litre. It cleans phenomenally. Next cleaner I'd like to be a 10 litre. Yeah, I mean, I've seen a photo of your cleaner, Jay, and yours is sort of an elongated one, which works, I think, quite well, and particularly with a lot of those newer Mac boards that are long and thin. I do like the idea. I mean, with mine's this 10 litre bath. If I could stretch that 10 litres out that way and that way, so they could just sort of slot boards into it like a toaster or something like that, that would be awesome. But no, it's not like that. But this cost me a couple of $100. I mean, those other ones cost a lot more than that, so can't complain. that is pretty much it. I think I'll probably wrap things up now. So unless anyone has any further questions about anything in particular, I'll probably call it a day. As I say, I'm going to get this clean. I am going to put this back together and test it out today, but I won't be live streaming that. But I will probably report on how it all went in a later live stream. I am in the process of recording a video of a tear down and recapping of a Macintosh portable backlight version. That one is going to be a pre-recorded video rather than a live stream, only because it's just a lot easier to do tear downs pre-recorded, because it means I can do lots of close-ups and different camera angles and show different things all close up. As you can see, when I was doing a lot of the stuff today, it's very hard to get things zoomed in and stuff when I'm pulling things apart. Is there any Mac I won't recap? That's a good question. Not so far. I can tell you ones that suck. I can tell you ones that I really hate doing. I did a 7300 the other day, and that's got like 35 freaking capacitors on it. So that one sucks because there's just so many capacitors. I mean, when you get started on that one, you just feel like there's no end to it. I've got someone sending me a 9600 to recap. That's got the same amount of caps as well. 9600, by the way, Redk Mods, video before, live stream, 9600, same computer. So if you haven't seen, sort of Greg Redk's video stream from earlier today, jump onto Redk Mods and have a look, and you can see the 9600. But yes, I've got a 9600 coming for a recap. I personally don't think it's a computer that needs recapping yet, and I have told the owner that, but he is keen to future-proof it. And so, far be it for me to argue with that. I can understand the logic behind it. He wants to get it done so he doesn't have to worry about it in the future. So I'm going to be recapping that. But one that I think is definitely by far the most difficult to do is the Macintosh Portable, which I am going to be doing one of very soon. And the reason for that is that there are two connectors on the board for the keyboard and the trackball. They're interchangeable so that you can make it a left-handed or right-handed setup. So you've got the trackball goes into one plug and the keyboard goes into the other, but you can swap them into different positions. Those connectors, each of them, one of them has 3 capacitors up against it, the other one has 2 capacitors up against it. And they are so hard up against that plastic, it is almost impossible to solder those new caps on without melting it. So that one sucks. But I would never refuse to recap a portable, because, I mean, as stupid as they are, I want to keep them going. I like to keep as many of those things going as possible, even though the Macintosh Portable, as we know, is a great big heavy lemon that uses sealed lead acid batteries. And is very easy to damage and all that sort of stuff. But anyhow. Right, now... okay, so what did I do? Hang on, it's calling after this. Okay, I'll just there's a little bit of stuff while I've been chatting away here. As a remember, nice to remember, going to start checking my floppies and CD-ROMs as well, I guess. The floppies are still an ongoing thing for me, in particular with the manual inject. I've recapped a few of those. I did those in a live stream recently, and they're still not working. But they weren't working before I recapped them, so there could be other things. It could be heads, it could be mechanisms, I don't know what, but they're still a work in progress with those floppy drives. I've got to, sort that out and then potentially have advice for other people if they're wanting to repair theirs. Right, so it's just got 35 caps here on the Mac, should I be on Mac Pro at the moment, so I'll Discord for a bit. Okay, so I think that's it. I think that's pretty much the whole thing. So once again, thank you everyone for sticking around. We've been going for a couple of hours now, which is a fair sized stream. It's not my shortest and not my longest. So thank you. I will enjoy my Sunday. It is now 4 o'clock. It's definitely getting close to party time. Yep, thank you for everyone for sticking around. Please like the video if you haven't. Please subscribe if you haven't. If there's anything that I've been talking about here you're interested in buying yourself, there are links in the description. Please click on those links to buy things if you want them. Please click on those links. Don't just go to Amazon. Click on those links. It's much better. and I may or may not get onto Discord just for a little while. I do have to do some work in front of the computer, so I may well Discord for a little while. So if anyone wants to chat, I will probably be there. Jay has just put up the link for the Discord. So thanks again, guys. I appreciate you watching, and I will see you at the next stream. So goodbye now, and then I'll say, are you sure you want to end your stream? Yes, I am. Bye, everyone. Thanks again.